Welcome to Dementia Air, a content channel devoted solely to exploring topics related to dementia. Dementia Air is a production of Beyond Dementia Coalition, a not-for-profit 501c3 which seeks to reduce stigma and help all of us not only recognize but also accept, assist, and embrace people living with dementia as valued and beloved members of the community. See the person beyond the disease. My name is Bruce Leyton, and I'm your Dementia Air podcast host. And joining us today is Stacey Childers, a dedicated advocate for holistic well-being and dementia care. With a background as a corporate wellness specialist and entrepreneur, Stacey has embraced yogic teachings to cultivate a comprehensive approach to health and caregiving. Her deep commitment as a caregiver to her mother has shaped her leadership as the program manager for the Beyond Dementia Coalition, as a certified Dawn Dementia Care Specialist and Virtual Dementia Tour certified trainer. She brings expertise and compassion to her work, further extending her impact as an Alzheimer's Association volunteer support group facilitator. Wow, Stacey, welcome, first of all.
Well, thank you, Bruce. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, given what I just said, your background provides a uniquely powerful perspective for the subject I was hoping to discuss today, which is spirituality in the context of caregiver wellness. And if that's okay with you, I do have a question regarding spirituality. Is that okay if we, first of all, delve into spirituality and talk about that a little bit and then get into
Yeah,
your work? Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
good, because I know you have a lot to say on it, and I just want to introduce the topic. So to me, spirituality is a pretty broad concept, right? But yet deeply personal. So I
Yes.
don't want to take for granted that we all think about it in the same way. And so I'm hoping you can share how you think or feel about spirituality and kind of the practices you associate with spirituality and its application in the work of dementia caregiving to kind of to tee this discussion up. Is that okay? Can you do that?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So personally, I've found, a lot of comfort and strength in the spiritual practices or aspects of wellness, shall I say. It's something that I've personally explored deeply. So I've discovered some really interesting perspectives that I think can offer support to dementia caregivers. Both for those who already walk a spiritual path and for those who might be open to exploring one. And I'm going to start with a statement, and I'm going to repeat it twice because it's so important, and that is how we look at tough times really matters. How we look at tough times, it really matters. I'm going to start with a Christian author, John By the Way, who explains it, I think, beautifully. And he says, something wonderful happens when we really know without a doubt that God loves us. Our questions completely change. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Or why doesn't God care about me? We say, well, I know God loves me. I know that. So what can I learn from this experience? And in looking at other, religious ideas, I found that Rabbi Mendel Kalmason and Rabbi Zalman Abraham also suggest moving from why is this happening to me to what is my purpose in this? And there was a lot of explanation about the Hebrew language and how a word can be made up of the same letters and mean one thing, and then those letters can be rearranged to mean something, opposed to that. So that's where that idea came from. I can't pronounce Hebrew words, so I left that out. But even Viktor Frankl, who faced, unimaginable hardships in the Nazi concentration camps, found that in some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. I can't imagine having that perspective if I had been in a concentration camp. But all of this resonates with the Buddhist understanding that while pain is a given in our changing lives, because you know how much humans love change, suffering is our choice. And that's a hard one to swallow. Suffering is our choice. Our resistance instead of acceptance and compassionate response is what creates that suffering. And it reminds me of the saying, maybe you've heard this one, Bruce, you know the best way to make God laugh? Have you heard that one?
Go ahead. No, I was waiting for the answer.
No? Okay.
I don't know. I need the answer though. So please
You
help
need
me
the
out
answer.
here.
Here we go. It's tell him your plans.
Tell them your plans. Exactly right.
Tell him your
Interesting.
plans.
Can I ask you a question? So
Yeah, please.
I'm hearing what I'm hearing is kind of a sense of connection to something greater than oneself. And to some extent, this gets to, kind of the search for meaning in life. I heard you say meaning. Um,
Yes.
and it can take different forms. So you've referred to some religious texts, and it does go to religious beliefs to some extent. But there's also personal growth, which I think you've experienced and have articulated that goes to mindfulness, maybe a connection to nature and art as well. Is that a good way of thinking about it? It's kind of a broader
Yeah,
quality.
even for those people not on a spiritual path, I think most people, I'm making a big assumption there, but most people can agree that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how I react to it, right?
Hmm.
So our response is big, and that's big for dementia caregivers. Um, because what they face is so unique, and we'll talk about that a little later. But it's just our natural resistance to change. And with dementia, it's not just the initial diagnosis that's the change. There's just this constant, never-ending change all the way through the progression of the disease.
Hmm. Well, let's take a step back and look at kind of that first moment when a caregiver realizes that they're stepping into the shoes of a caregiver.
Yeah.
There's that. Yeah, I've heard it described. So there's the diagnosis that might come from a neurologist. Seems to me, based on people I've spoken to, big gap between that and then what comes next and how they navigate their journey over the dementia terrain. So I was hoping you could talk about that, maybe describe the challenges and complexities that someone faces stepping into the shoes of a caregiver.
I would love to do that as well. So, when we say caring for someone with dementia is complex, we're talking about how the condition itself creates all these unique and often overlapping challenges. And while there are many, there are two that really illustrate those complexities perfectly. And that is one, the constant need for education about dementia as it progresses. And two, the demanding task of like I said, navigating the ever-changing reality experienced by the person with dementia. The complexities of dementia caregiving are immediate. As soon as you get that diagnosis, you just feel overwhelmed. And then you've got this steep initial learning curve that just continues indefinitely. And when a loved one receives a diagnosis under that broad term of dementia, you're confronted with navigating a complex progressive brain disease that, get this, it's something even scientists don't fully grasp. So when you talked about that gap in the diagnosis and now what do I do? Well, it's because no, there's really nothing, or not very many people know exactly what to do, right? So you're just stuck with this. What do I need to know and where do I find it? And the caregiving journey as it continues, then you realize, wow, I'm being constantly faced um, with shifts in this disease and the person's evolving needs. So I'm continually having to learn and figure things out as I go. What I've often observed in supporting dementia caregivers is how this immediate and intense plunge into the territory called dementia can leave individuals just feeling utterly lost and panicked. I mean, I see it in their eyes that some of them, it's that deer in the headlights, stare of disbelief. And for others, it can be a frantic energy, a kind of a henny penny anxiety. And I'll tell you, it's really difficult to witness the despair, the panic. And what I'm guessing from my own experience is this just, hope for an escape from this, right? It can
Yeah.
be really heart-wrenching. The second part of that is navigating the ever-changing reality of the person living with dementia. Having moved from Arizona to Georgia 3 years ago to support my mom's dementia journey, and now sharing a multi-generational home with my mom and dad, I experienced this firsthand. For my mom, her perception of the world can shift dramatically, like even moment to moment. And it can leave you scrambling to find your equilibrium. It requires, learning to quickly step into their reality, validating their feelings, regardless of factual accuracy, which is very difficult for people, especially in the beginning, and adapting communication to connect within their current cognitive abilities. And all of this while you are managing, the own emotional impact of your changing relationship with that person. And so I have this analogy, if you will indulge me.
Sure.
Think of a dementia caregiver's life like trying to stand up in a canoe on Lake Lanier. The canoe itself is the caregiving situation. It's inherently a bit unstable, always susceptible to the unpredictable movements of the water. And then the person with dementia is like the shifting weight within the canoe. Their moods, their abilities, their needs, they can just change suddenly. And it's like a wave hits the side of the canoe, throwing you off balance. As a new caregiver, you might feel like you're firmly planted, you're sitting low and stable in that canoe, and you got this, right? But as the dementia progresses, that weight shifts more dramatically and more often. And you realize that staying seated isn't always effective. And so now you've got to stand up to better navigate, see what's coming to provide that necessary support.
Yeah. I got it. Thank you for that. And I just want to let everybody know there are other podcasts that we are doing that speak to the resources
Ah,
available to somebody. But what I was hoping to
great.
chat with you about is to take a look at kind of the connection between the caregiver and the practices of spirituality and kind of what you've encountered and how you engage with them.
So one of the things, here's an example, a real life example of my life that kind of gave me an epiphany. My caregiving approach with mom is guided by Judy Cornish's Dawn method. Her teaching that individuals experiencing dementia are constantly assessing whether their caregiver is emotionally safe to be around by intuiting whether, that caregiver is generally relaxed and happy or often worried and upset. That's been a really powerful guide for me. And this became especially clear during a pedicure outing with mom. When my own pedicure was delayed, I felt that internal frustration rising, but I was remembering the Dawn method training I received, and I knew my reaction would impact my mom's experience. So I consciously chose to focus on just having a good time with her. And later on, reflecting on this, I realized the positive feeling of managing my emotions this way and wondered, why wouldn't I extend that same grace to myself regardless of mom's presence? It was a new perspective on responding calmly when things don't align with my expectations. And so, the teachings that, or the method that I use is really about helping support my mom in with those skills that she can no longer use, that she doesn't have anymore because of the dementia. And managing mood and things like that is one of them. As for my personal practices, yes, first of all, I embrace this dementia opportunity for personal growth. instead of looking at it as, I don't know, like a punishment or something. No, none of us wishes for dementia, but as long as it's here, I would like to get something positive out of it. And I feel like I am. I do meditate and pray daily. I like to start my day with meditation and prayer because that is when I'm setting the tone for the day. And I can tell when I skip it. If I don't do it, I'm probably not going to feel as good about the day as if I make sure to do it. And then I also end the day, or sometimes maybe my meditation is in the middle of the day. If I'm feeling really stressed, I'll get, 10 or 15 minutes away and utilize that meditation and prayer again so that I can continue. And I find this extremely effective. I also do water aerobics 3 times a week. That's something else that I think, caregivers need to realize. You have to take care of yourself. You have to unpack each day's accumulated stress because the impact of unmanaged stress cannot be overstated. Just can't. It's like calories. If you consume more than you burn, it's going to weigh you down.
Yeah, the the number of informal or unpaid caregivers in Georgia certainly, and then the United States in total, and probably around the world, is astounding. And the stress and the health issues they face as a result of that, depression or otherwise. I mean, the statistics are there. So thank you for being and sharing kind of the practical nature of that and how it relates to you, personal growth and practice. I did have one question I wanted to ask you, and I think we'll wrap it up. In my world, I've heard people struggle with caregiver clubs and support groups, dementia for caregivers, and there seem to be two different things. Sometimes they seem to be conflated. So I'm assuming there's a distinction between a caregiver that's giving care or a care partner or a caregiver to somebody with dementia and just caregiving in general, if you will. Somebody that's broken a leg and needs somebody to be with them for a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is what makes dementia caregivers unique.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Okay. So what really sets them apart again is the fact that we have to think on our feet constantly just to navigate these ever shifting realities and narratives of the person we're caring for. And you see it play out in little everyday moments. For instance, my cat Linus loves his daily back scratch from grandma. But while she's petting him, she'll often look over at me and as if she's talking to him and say, "What are you going to do when you're not here for me to scratch your back?" And so I'll just playfully jump in with, "Show me how it's done, Mom." And then another question she asks a lot is, "How did Linus do on the car ride here?" My cheerful answer is always, "He did great. He's such a good boy," even though his only trip was a quick ride from the nearby PetSmart where I adopted him. And it's in these moments where you really see the dementia at work because mom's mind has gone back in time. And she genuinely believes I'm just visiting from Arizona. Her sense of time's all mixed up. She doesn't remember or understand that I've been living here as her caregiver for over 3 years now. And so, as a dementia caregiver, you quickly learn that you have to be ready with responses that won't cause emotional distress because then you're going to end up dealing with trying to de-escalate a situation that you unintentionally created. Yeah, if I have another just minute, I wanted to
Yeah,
share
sure.
a quote from Judy Cornish because I really, really love this quote. And she says, "Don't sacrifice companionship for logic." You know, Dementia doesn't just erase memories, it alters them. And so while it's well intentioned, to give corrections and might be technically accurate, it can be deeply upsetting and damaging to your relationship with the person. And so that's a really big concept that is actually difficult for some caregivers to embrace.
Yeah. And persons with dementia still have will, they have emotions, and they have needs, right? Um,
Absolutely.
like we all do. It's so important to focus in on also, I think, and I'm just making the contrast with a caregiver that's in the house to help somebody that's had a broken leg because perhaps their loved one needs to get out and they need help in the interim. Difference between that and being the caregiver for somebody with dementia is that you really need to be person centered when you're thinking about it. Who is the person? Know the person. Where are they? Meet them where they are. Because as you've just said, the reality isn't the same for somebody with dementia as it is for everybody that has their full cognitive capabilities. And also making it meaningful, right? The exchange, connecting with and being with somebody is a lot different than sitting with them because they just can't get up to go to the sink to clean dishes or whatever. So at any
Exactly.
rate, yeah. So I did want to thank you, Stacey. When I started these podcasts, we started thinking about it as interviewing subject matter experts, but it's apparent that it also takes people matter experts, right? This is about
Ab-
people as well. It's not just about a subject. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it, and we'll chat with you soon. Take care.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Take care.
Beyond Dementia Coalition is on a quest to close the dementia preparedness gap we face. To get there, we sure could use your support as a donor or a volunteer. To get involved, please go to beyonddementiacoalition.org. All donations are tax deductible, and be sure to subscribe to our mailing list to receive our monthly newsletter in your inbox, where we'll share new podcasts, fact sheets, webinars, blogs, and other dementia-related content. This is Dementia Air. See the person beyond the disease.